But we face this crisis in the Solomons, and the Prime Minister said that a Chinese naval base would cross a red line, and we are not having it. Now, as your friend Greg Sheridan and my friend has said, and I quote him, the Australian Defence Force is almost insanely structured to meet none of our strategic needs. And he says, not one of our services, Navy, Air Force or Army, has any strategic strike power. Every one of our major defence programs is in disarray with their scheduled to deliver capability so far into the future that it's in the realm of science fiction. What are your thoughts about Greg's comments?
Well, I certainly think that it's important to accelerate our military build-up, and it's important not to get so hung up on having a small amount of the very best that we don't quickly get as much as possible of what's actually good and effective. I should also say, Alan, that the armed forces that the Howard government created were very much shaped by the experience of East Timor, which was an Australian intervention in some very difficult circumstances that East Timor found itself in the process of separating from Indonesia. Now those armed forces would be quite capable of acting in the South Pacific should the government choose to do that. I'm not suggesting that they would or should, but certainly they would be capable of acting in the South Pacific. But whether they'd be able to act in the Taiwan Straits, given the current circumstances, is another story. But just at the moment, Alan, we've plainly got a situation where the government of the Solomon Islands and individuals within that government look to have been bought by China. It seems to have been a Chinese invasion of the Solomon Islands Parliament.
But when we say,
I think should be
quite, but I mean, but Tony, when we tell China not to cross the red line, when we tell China not to cross the red line, what do we do if they cross the red line?
Well, we do not want to telegraph our response. Maybe that was one of the difficulties in the Ukraine. Too much was telegraphed in advance, and therefore the Russian dictator felt that he was perhaps not up against as much as it's turned out he is up against.
That's right.
So I'm not sure that we should be telegraphing precisely what might be done. I think the Prime Minister is right to indicate to the Chinese, to the Solomon Islanders, and indeed to the wider world that we are taking this extremely seriously, as we should. Because as you might remember, Alan, the battle for Guadalcanal was the great strategic battle of the Pacific War.
Absolutely.
And a hostile base in the Solomon Islands would certainly be very well placed to threaten trade between Australia and the United States.
Just a quick one before you go. UN officials have told Australia they should abolish the coal industry by 2030. Surely this is self-destructive to abolish the coal industry, because global coal, the use of it, will not decline. Our export markets would be taken by other countries like China and India, and our coal-fired power stations using Australian coal produce fewer greenhouse gas emissions. So close our coal industry and grow the industry in China and Indonesia, you increase carbon dioxide emissions. How does any of that make sense?
Well, it doesn't, and it would be easier to take these so-called UN officials seriously if they gave the same instructions to China. But plainly, they won't give the same instructions to China, which just goes to show that this whole thing is a one-sided attack on the economic strength of the democracies, and it should be treated with a degree of contempt.
Good on you. Always good to talk to you. Thank you for your time. Hope we can talk again soon. We really appreciate your insights. There he is. What an outstanding figure within the Liberal Party and in terms of national government. Never given a fair go, though. Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister of Australia.